Imagine this. You've just delivered the perfect argument, airtight logic, flawless timing, and undeniable facts. You sit back, convinced you've won, but instead of peace, you're met with distance, cold silence. Or worse, tears. If this sounds familiar, then let me tell you something hard but essential. You didn't win. You lost something more valuable than the argument. You lost connection. In a relationship, winning an argument often means the relationship loses. And that cost is too great. People often approach conflict in relationships like lawyers, presenting evidence, cross-examining motives, dissecting contradictions. But the truth is, your partner isn't your opponent, and your home isn't a courtroom. Relationships are living systems, emotional ecosystems that require balance, not dominance. If one person wins, the system becomes unstable. Your partner may concede outwardly, but they withdraw emotionally. You might feel justified, but something will fracture beneath the surface. Trust, safety, intimacy. You need to ask yourself, do I want to be right or do I want to be close? You're not really fighting about the dishes, or being late, or how money is spent. You're fighting about what those things represent. Dishes become symbols of respect or neglect. Tardiness can trigger feelings of being unimportant. Arguments are rarely about content. They are about emotional context. Winning becomes impossible because you're battling ghosts, old wounds, unmet needs, buried insecurities. If you don't understand what's really being said beneath the words, you can't respond meaningfully. You'll win the point, maybe, but miss the message entirely, and nothing drives a wedge deeper than being unheard in a place that's supposed to be your sanctuary. When your partner raises their voice, criticizes, or even accuses, they're often trying, clumsily, to reconnect. It's a cry, do you see me? Do I still matter to you? But if you interpret that as an attack and fire back with logic or sarcasm, you escalate the distance. The energy of many arguments comes from a desire to be noticed, affirmed, and safe. If you meet that energy with gentleness instead of defense, empathy instead of pride, the conflict begins to resolve before it ever peaks. When you learn to hear the need behind the noise, you realize most arguments are actually emotional rescue missions in disguise. It's easy to lash out when you feel cornered. It's easy to aim for the jugular when you feel hurt. But that's not strength, that's impulse. Real strength in a relationship is restraint. It's pausing when you want to explode. It's choosing understanding over victory. If your goal is to build a lasting partnership, then your ego has to sit down and let humility take the wheel, because no long-term relationship survives the tyranny of I must win. The relationship thrives when both partners fight the problem, not each other. Winning together requires you to lose the need to dominate. People often assume that if they can just lay out the facts clearly, make a logical case, and dismantle their partner's argument point by point, they will win. But this mindset is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of what a relationship actually is. A romantic relationship is not a courtroom, and your partner is not your opposition in a legal battle. The desire to win is rooted in ego, and ego has no place in a space meant for mutual vulnerability and emotional safety. The truth is, relationships are dynamic, living systems, more like a fragile ecosystem than a battlefield. They require harmony, balance, and constant tending. If you upset that balance in the name of being right, the ecosystem begins to deteriorate, often in ways that are not immediately visible. When you win an argument with your partner, it often comes at the cost of your connection with them. You may succeed in silencing them or forcing a retreat, but what you've actually done is damaged the very space in which intimacy grows. Over time, these victories accumulate into emotional distance. Your partner may become quieter, more hesitant, less expressive, not because they're growing or healing, but because they're withdrawing. They've learned that speaking up ends in defeat or dismissal. And even if you don't intend it, what you're reinforcing is the belief that the relationship is not a place where their voice is safe or valued. That's not a win, that's a loss of trust. Human beings are not purely rational creatures. We are made of emotions, experiences, and subconscious patterns. If we treat emotional conflicts as intellectual debates, we ignore the undercurrent of what's truly being communicated. This creates a dangerous cycle. One partner pushes for logic while the other pleads for empathy. Neither gets what they need. The conversation becomes a chess match instead of a moment of connection. The focus shifts from solving the issue to proving a point, and when that happens, no one actually feels heard. The relational space becomes tense, defensive, and cold. Winning an argument in such a space is like cutting down a tree in a garden and calling it progress because now there's more sunlight. Sure, there's light, but you've disrupted the entire system. That tree was shelter, fruit, shade, history. Similarly, in a relationship, your partner's emotions, concerns, and even their irrational reactions are part of the ecosystem. To dismiss or overpower them for the sake of being right is to uproot the trust and compassion that give the relationship life. Most couples believe they are arguing about surface-level issues, chores, money, schedules, habits, tone of voice. But beneath nearly every recurring argument lies something far more potent: emotion, meaning, and history. The real fuel behind these conflicts isn't the specific trigger, but the emotional charge attached to it. When your partner gets upset about something that seems trivial on the surface, it's rarely just about that one moment. It's about what that moment represents in the broader context of the relationship and their inner emotional world. And unless you're attuned to that deeper layer, you'll keep addressing the symptom, not the source. Take, for example, the classic fight over dirty dishes in the sink. You might think it's simply about hygiene or responsibilities, but for your partner, that pile of dishes might symbolize being undervalued, unheard, or taken for granted. Maybe they've repeatedly expressed their needs and feel invisible when nothing changes to them. It's not just dishes, it's a sign that they're not being respected. If you respond with logic, "I was tired," or "I'll do them later," you miss the emotional subtext entirely. You might win the factual argument, but your partner walks away emotionally dismissed. That leaves a deeper scar than the disagreement itself. Similarly, arguments about finances often stem from unspoken fears. Fear of scarcity, fear of instability, fear of losing control. A discussion about overspending isn't just about a receipt, it's about security. It's about someone saying, "I need to feel safe," even if they don't have the words to express it that way. If you engage with only the numbers, you overlook the emotional plea. And when emotional needs are consistently neglected, resentment begins to form like layers of sediment, quietly hardening beneath the surface of the relationship. This dynamic applies even more painfully when old emotional wounds are touched. If your partner was abandoned, ignored, or criticized in the past, even small missteps today can reopen those ancient wounds. A late reply to a message may echo years of feeling unimportant. A sarcastic tone may revive memories of being belittled. These reactions may seem disproportionate if you're only looking at the immediate situation, but emotions don't live on timelines. They emerge from accumulated experiences. If you fail to acknowledge that, you risk invalidating your partner's reality. When arguments keep repeating themselves despite resolution attempts, it's almost always because the deeper issues haven't been named. Understanding this truth shifts your role in conflict. You stop trying to win and start trying to listen to what's really being said underneath the words, beneath the volume, behind the anger. You begin to notice the emotional patterns that repeat and start to respond to the heart of the matter, not just the surface. And when you do that, you stop arguing and start healing. When most people hear yelling, accusations, or passive, aggressive remarks from their partner, they immediately go on the defensive. They assume they're under attack. But the truth is often far more vulnerable than that. Beneath the surface of most arguments lies something unexpected, a desperate, clumsy attempt at reconnection, a cry for closeness, a bid to be seen, heard, and validated. But it comes out wrapped in frustration, sharp words, or anger, not because your partner wants to hurt you, but because they don't know how else to say, "I feel disconnected and I miss you." This is where many relationships falter. One person expresses pain or frustration, but the other only hears criticism. And once criticism is perceived, walls go up, defenses activate, the brain interprets this as danger, and suddenly, both partners are fighting not to be right, but to protect their sense of self. In this reactive state, neither person is really listening. They're simply waiting for their turn to speak, to retaliate, or to justify themselves. But behind this emotional chaos, there's usually a simple question longing to be answered. Do I still matter to you? In emotionally intelligent relationships, people learn to recognize these bids for connection even when they arrive in messy, imperfect forms. A sarcastic comment might actually be a protest of loneliness. An angry tone might mask fear of abandonment. Even silence, often mistaken as indifference, can be a shield for vulnerability. Your partner isn't always trying to hurt you. They may be trying, in the only way they know how at that moment, to say they're afraid of losing you. And this recognition is powerful, because when you stop interpreting your partner's intensity as an attack and start seeing it as a plea for closeness, everything changes. Your reaction softens, you listen more carefully. You speak with less heat and more humanity. This doesn't mean you accept abuse or lose your boundaries, but it does mean you choose curiosity over combat. You begin to ask yourself, what's really going on here? What need is trying to be expressed underneath all this noise? Once you understand that most arguments are, in their rawest form, emotional rescue attempts, you can begin to meet them with empathy. Instead of matching anger with anger, you can create space for understanding. Instead of fueling conflict, you can soothe it by answering the deeper need. Sometimes that's all it takes. Not a perfectly crafted response, but simply recognizing the ache behind the argument. Because at the heart of most fights is not hate or rage, it's longing. A longing to be loved, held, understood. And when you respond to that longing instead of the words that cover it, you bring your relationship back to connection instead of division. In the heat of an argument, the easiest thing in the world is to react. Words come flying out like arrows, designed not just to express pain, but to inflict it. We say things we don't truly mean. We raise our voices, we roll our eyes, we mock, we shut down. Why? Because we feel cornered, hurt, disrespected, and we think that the only way to regain power or dignity in the moment is to fight back. But that impulse, though deeply human, is not strength. That's not power. That's reflex. Real strength, the kind that builds lasting connection, lies in restraint. Restraint doesn't mean suppression. It doesn't mean biting your tongue until you explode later. It means consciously choosing your response rather than reacting on impulse. It means staying grounded when you feel provoked. It means slowing down when everything in you wants to speed up and strike, and this is hard. It's hard because it demands maturity. It demands a kind of emotional discipline that doesn't come naturally when you're upset. But it's precisely in those moments of emotional chaos that restraint becomes the most powerful thing you can practice. It's a form of leadership within yourself and within the relationship. When you choose not to retaliate, you are sending your partner a message far more powerful than any argument could ever deliver. You're saying, I care more about us than I care about winning this moment. You're proving that love is more important than ego, that understanding is more valuable than being right, and this changes the energy in the room. It de-escalates the tension. It opens the door for your partner to soften as well. Because conflict is contagious, but so is calm. When one person regulates their emotions, it invites the other to do the same. There's a dangerous myth that says strength is found in domination, outsmarting, out-arguing, overpowering. But the people who truly build enduring relationships are the ones who master themselves. They don't let every insult provoke a counterattack. They don't escalate conflict into emotional war zones. They don't chase the thrill of being right at the expense of peace. They pause, reflect, and ask, what's actually helpful right now? What will protect the relationship rather than damage it? This kind of strength is subtle but transformative. It might look like silence when you're tempted to shout. It might look like a deep breath instead of a biting remark. It might look like saying, let's take a break and come back to this, even when you're dying to finish the fight. In those moments, you're not being weak, you're being wise. You're not backing down, you're stepping up, not into battle, but into responsibility. And that is where the true power of partnership begins. The heart of this speech lies in the recognition that a romantic relationship is not a battlefield where one person emerges victorious while the other retreats in defeat. When we treat disagreements with our partners as contests to be won, we miss the fundamental truth that relationships thrive not on dominance, but on connection. Winning an argument may satisfy the ego temporarily, but it often erodes the very foundation of intimacy. In a loving partnership, the goal should never be to overpower, but to understand, to build a shared reality in which both voices are heard, both perspectives are valued, and both individuals feel emotionally safe. If one person walks away from a conversation feeling invalidated, dismissed, or small, then no matter how sound the logic was, something precious has been lost. Every relationship carries with it a sea of unseen emotional undercurrents. Beneath the surface, level complaints and criticisms often lie much deeper feelings, fears of abandonment, longings for respect, needs for affection and recognition. When we fail to acknowledge those deeper layers, we end up speaking past each other, solving the wrong problems and repeating the same arguments again and again. True communication begins when we stop defending our position and start asking ourselves, what is my partner really feeling? What are they trying to say that they don't have the words for? This shift in attention, from facts to emotions, from content to context, is what transforms conflict into growth. At the core of most emotionally charged arguments is not hostility, but vulnerability. Our partners reach for us in painful, messy ways, and we often misinterpret those moments as attacks rather than attempts at reconnection. When you can see anger as a disguised cry for closeness, when you hear beneath the complaint a desire to be valued, everything begins to change. The argument becomes less about right and wrong and more about repair and realignment. Recognizing these hidden emotional needs takes empathy, and responding to them takes courage. But when you develop the skill to meet your partner in their pain rather than react to their words, you shift the relationship from a pattern of combat to a dance of healing. Ultimately, true strength in a relationship is shown not through sharp rebuttals or intellectual victories, but through emotional self-mastery. It's choosing love over pride, unity over ego, resolution over revenge. It's taking the higher road, not because you're weaker, but because you value the relationship more than your momentary need to prove a point. In this kind of emotional maturity, a new kind of winning is born, one in which both partners feel seen, respected, and cared for. And that, in the deepest sense, is the only kind of win that truly matters in love. Thank you so much for watching and spending your valuable time with this message. I hope it offered your insight, reflection, and perhaps a shift in how you approach communication in your relationships. Remember, love is not a war to win, it's a space to grow, to heal, and to truly connect. If this message resonated with you, please consider sharing it with someone who may need it. Don't forget to like, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe to the channel for more empowering and thought-provoking content. Your support means the world and helps us reach more people who are looking for depth, clarity, and truth in their personal growth journey. Stay mindful, stay compassionate, and keep choosing love over ego. Thank you and goodbye for now. Until next time.